A Caltech-trained astrophysicist, successful three-time serial entrepreneur, and a pioneer in decentralized technology and online globalization strategy. Jordan Woods is passionate about science and technology, sustainability, renewable energy, and the pursuit of innovation to create a better world. He is a founding partner at Star Chain Ventures, a Silicon Valley-based venture studio focused on solving significant global challenges with advanced technologies. He had raised $48 million funding for his ventures from top investors and generated millions of dollars in revenue and expanded startups nationally and internationally. Jordan is an expert in enterprise blockchain, fundraising, startup acceleration, and global entrepreneurship. He's on the advisory board of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, Smart Cities Economic Development Commission, and multiple US and international startups in fintech, healthcare, and sustainability. He has also been a guest speaker at Stanford University, Google, MIT, UC Berkeley, and leading blockchain and AI conferences in Silicon Valley. We also have with us Radhika Iyengar, who is a leading speaker in blockchain, AI, IoT, personalized medicine, pharma supply chain, enterprise blockchain, blockchain security, privacy, and identity management. She is a TEDx speaker, Silicon Valley Woman of Influence, keynote speaker, author, and a serial entrepreneur. She is an advisory member for California Government Ops Blockchain Working Group and a board member at TiE Silicon Valley. She was a keynote speaker at Stanford, Google, UC Berkeley, UCLA, and at major Silicon Valley and global conferences. She spearheaded multiple financial, healthcare, and power inclusion initiatives using blockchain technology in emerging markets. She advised governments and international accelerators in digital health, AI, ML, big data, predictive analytics, and mobile. She raised $100+ million for startups through international acceleration programs in EU and Latin America. She speaks 9 languages and has an extensive multicultural experience. She is a certified network engineer and holds an MBA from Chapman University. Jordan, Radhika, it's a pleasure to have you here. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shubhangini.
Thanks, Shubhangini. Pleasure to be here with you. Are we on? Are we live?
Yes.
Oh, great. So I guess we'll do a little bit more, I guess, on the bio because maybe it was a slightly outdated bio. So I'll just say that for myself, in addition to the bio that you provided, I'm also on the advisory board for the World Business Angel Investment Forum in the USA country office. And a board member at Upward, which is a global network of executive women, and on the advisory board of 2 blockchain and healthcare focused initiatives, Partners in Digital Health Institute, as well as Blockchain and Healthcare Today, which is the first peer-reviewed journal focused on blockchain and healthcare. Definitely passionate about healthcare and emerging technology in general. As a serial entrepreneur and as an ecosystem builder, this is something that is always the moving into the next generation technology and next generation solutions. So that's definitely what I'm personally excited about and focused on, and indeed one of the big reasons why I collaborated with my my colleague and my co-author Jordan Woods to write this book. So Jordan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to put up a slide, and it is for the book itself. And so you can scan, if you'd like, that Scan Me QR code, and that will enable you to learn more about us as well as the book. There's also a link there. If the scan of the QR code doesn't work, you can go to Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived. The book is really divided up into 3 sections. The first section is really an overview, so a little bit of history in terms of blockchain, where it came from. There's also an introduction by W. Scott Stornetta, who's a father of blockchain. A lot of people think Satoshi Nakamoto was the father of blockchain. He's the father of Bitcoin, but not the father of blockchain. Actually, blockchain started about 20 years earlier. And so, you know, Dr. Stornetta is one of the co-inventors of blockchain technology. So we kind of go, you know, through that a little bit. And then we get into our thesis. And our thesis is really that if you look at Web 2.0, the world that we live in, it's really at the point where it's really gone beyond the scale of the usage of Web 2.0 has really outstripped its ability to cope with the amount of fraud, the amount of counterfeiting, the amount of problems that we see in the online world. And so if you went through Web 1 and then you went into Web 2, you've seen how one version of the internet can, you know, take over and become a revolution that changes things from the first. Web 3.0 is really where we are now, and blockchain is a foundational layer. It's what we call the Internet of Trust. And then we see coming after that the Internet of Value, which we're starting to see with cryptocurrencies and tokenization. And then there's the Internet of Identity. And so the book kind of goes through and explains how this new foundation will provide a new opportunity for us to take control and make the online world something that can be of benefit to you, to me, to businesses, rather than just to those who are hackers and are perpetrating the massive amounts of fraud that we see online.
Do you want to go to the next slide, I think?
Radhika, sure.
Yeah. So, you know, in addition to that, we talk a lot in the book about the blockchain ethos. It's the spirit and the mindset behind blockchain, because it's as much a technology as it is a mindset. And I think we posit that, you know, we advocate the fact that blockchain is more than just a technology. It really is a mindset. For one thing, you know, in order to be successful in this technology, you have to embrace the ethos of blockchain. You have to embrace the mindset. And if you don't, you'll probably struggle with the technology itself. It's a very completely different view on business, on everyday life, in fact. And so if you think about the state of the current world that is not blockchain, one of the biggest issues is around data. Data is protected, hoarded sometimes, definitely not shared, and it's monetized in ways that we sometimes don't even have the knowledge of how it's being monetized. So I think in terms of the ethos, we talk about shared data. So this is about transparency of data across everybody that is utilizing the technology across a network, for example. And this shared data and this transparency is really at the core of this technology. It really isn't the zero-sum game, as we say in the old technology, which is the non-blockchain technology. We look at what is the future, and the future is about shared data. It's about thinking about how am I going to share, not just how am I going to compete. So in the current world, we talk about competition being a zero-sum game, because in order for someone to win, someone else has to lose and someone else has to be undermined. And so what this shared ethos, if you will, is really central to blockchain. The other is that it's peer-to-peer. So this is direct peer-to-peer, disintermediated, as we say, so there's no intermediary. This is a very powerful, direct sort of relationship between entities and between people. It's decentralized, and this is a very different concept from Web 2.0 world, where you've got one central store of data, and indeed that's the central point of failure. That is a single point of failure with data, with hackers being able to penetrate central stores of data and then getting basically the keys to the kingdom. With blockchain, everything is decentralized. And so the power of decentralization gives then rise to the power or the empowerment of the community. So the community-driven ethos of blockchain really means that everyone can contribute in the success of a network, in the success of something. It's also self-governing in certain networks, like Tezos, for example, is an example of a self-governing network. The other key ethos point that I'd like to put out, which is central to our book, is power symmetry. So when we talked about the lack of shareability in data, data is siloed, and that means that some people have access to information and other people don't. And so that's power asymmetry. What we're really moving to across this transparency in blockchain is that there's power symmetry.
Great. So, you know, like Radhika was talking about, there's this opportunity now to change the equation of what happens online. And online is becoming, especially with the pandemic, much more of everyone's existence. So a lot of people don't realize it, but there's over $2 trillion in fraud that is taking place annually, and this is growing exponentially. So the size of the dark web and fraud online is much larger now than what is actually happening in the quote unquote real web. And if you look at, for example, drugs, globally, there's about $200 billion in counterfeit drugs activity. And this is not like illicit drugs. This is drugs that are pharmaceutical drugs. And this leads to the deaths of around 100,000 to 1 million people a year. You know, handbags, luxury goods, etc. The list goes on and on and on. Plus, each and every one of us have our information monetized by centralized groups. As we know, most people have decided that this online marketplace of our information is bad, but they don't know what to do about it. The ethos and the capabilities that Radhika has talked about are what we then spend the second section of our book, which is all the use cases of where blockchain, especially in the enterprise. And we select the enterprise because the enterprise is that group of large companies that people trust and respect. So when the world's largest banks start becoming part of blockchain ecosystems, which they already have for the last 3-4 years, and we go through the different use cases and blockchain consortia, or the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, which have joined, you know, the largest blockchain consortia, both in Europe as well as the US, you know, if you start looking at supply chains and you realize that the largest food suppliers, the largest grocery stores, all of these different groups have selected blockchain because they're tired of the huge amounts of losses and lack of transparency to information. But a lot of people don't realize that this is actually going on. And so we really spend the second part of our book going into all of these different consortia which exist and are functioning and operating, and you're probably buying food from a blockchain you know, oriented consortium, because Albertsons and Kroger's and Walmart and all of the largest stores in the United States are actually using blockchain for getting the information and for their supply chain, because it reduces the friction within the supply chain. So for example, if there is some kind of a you know, some kind of food scare, this traceability to where did that food come from that led to the scare can be obtained within seconds rather than weeks. So that's just a quick example. The third section of our book, which goes into identity, Radhika, did you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I'll talk quickly about that because I think we're quickly running out of time. But the third section of our book is really the next frontier, which is the Internet of Identity. If we look at everything that we've experienced during the times of the pandemic, one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for all of us is that the world is increasingly digital. our experience is increasingly digital. Here we are at TiEcon in a completely virtual conference, speaking with all of you. And so I think that, you know, our digital experience, our digital identity is going to become increasingly important. Every transaction that is conducted digitally is going to have identity as its core. So I think that when we look at the risks that we have on security, on privacy, digital identity is one of those, not only is it going to be the cornerstone of next gen blockchain systems, but also the next gen everything. So I think that, you know, as we continue to progress through this digital experience with our digital online identities, protecting it, safeguarding what's personal and private, and really safeguarding our freedoms, essentially. I think this is really what it's all about. The other really exciting thing with identity is that the tokenization models that now come about, we talked about how others are monetizing our data. Blockchain changes that entire conversation, because if you're the true owner of your own data and you have full control over who has access to what, for how long, and what type of access it is, and you have this power and empowered sort of control over what is yours, and rightfully so, it really changes the nature of conversation and business. So businesses and technology companies, instead of monetizing your data, will have to ask for your permission, not only to use the data, but to allow you to opt in as well as monetize. So they'll have to pay you for your data. So I think depending on what kind of data you have that you might want to share for various purposes, there are new business models that are being employed to effect, I think, to a great effect. So I think the impact of what we do with our digital identities and what we do with our personal data, whether it's healthcare and being able to receive sort of the next gen of healthcare, which is personalized healthcare, whether it's banking and finance, where everything is tailored to us as individuals, whether it's supply chains or knowing what's ethically out there, all of those things are going to be tied to our own preferences and our own data. So I think this is the next gen kind of blockchain development, which is all about identity.
Yeah, and I'll make one final point on that, which is, you know, in the real world, we own things, right? But in the online world, we own nothing, right? There's nothing that's ours. It's all owned by others. And so this needs to change, right? Because as we become more of people that live online, we need to actually own digital things. And, you know, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, have kind of made the news in the last few months. Gives you a flavor of actually being able to own things online. But it's not just, you know, digital art. It could be really anything that we actually own can be tokenized and placed into a virtual world. That could be clothes, it could be digital music, it could be you know, IP, it can be patents, it can be literally, it could be cars, it could be titles to homes, it could be literally anything. All these things can be tokenized and owned by us and in a digital form. This is a completely alien concept. All these things are owned by other people. We have to pay for access. We have to pay for them to give us, you know, certain things. Or if we're not paying, they're digitizing and taking all of our actions and selling them. All of that can change. And this lack of symmetry in terms of certain groups making billions or trillions of dollars off of us and, you know, running the online world, it needs to change, where we actually can become part of this online world. And there's tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs as the entire ecosystem is remade to be fairer and more democratized. And that's what blockchain can bring. And, you know, what we have within, you know, our first book. And this is the first of 3 that we are in the process of writing. And looking forward to being in touch with you as you read and want to communicate with us.
I hope all of you will join us on this journey of technology. And I think anybody that's interested in emerging technologies will have to take a look at this book, because you have to understand the power of what this technology brings and where we're moving towards. So hope you'll all join us on this journey.
Lounge. Thanks, Radhika and Jorden, for joining us today. It was a pleasure meeting you all and getting to know more about your book.